The prince kissed her in the darkness of the ball, without knowing she was the palace maid. Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from. The chandeliers of Versailles glittered like captured stars. Music swelled, violins rising above the laughter and whispers of masked nobles. Claire moved through the golden hall as if walking through a dream she had no right to enter. She wasn't supposed to be there at all. The headmaid had fallen ill, and Claire had been sent with a borrowed gown and orders to serve discreetly. But when the countess she was meant to assist failed to appear, someone pressed a mask into her and told her to stay out of sight. She obeyed at first. She hid behind marble columns, trying not to be noticed. The gown was heavy, the silk foreign against her skin, the shoes too small, but no one called her by name. No one ordered her to fetch or clean. For the first time she was invisible in a different way, free, even if just for one night. Her heart pounded with the rhythm of the music. Couples glided across the floor, shimmering like reflections on water. Claire watched, captivated, until the motion blurred before her eyes. She took a step forward, then another. Someone brushed her shoulder. A masked gentleman turned, bowed slightly, mistaking her for one of his kind. She curtsied before she could stop herself. He smiled and moved away, and Claire laughed quietly, her voice trembling. The sound startled her. She wasn't supposed to laugh here. She was supposed to be silent, unseen. Yet the night felt bewitched, every note of the orchestra pulling her deeper into the illusion. She slipped into one of the side corridors, searching for a moment of calm. The hallway was dim, the flickering candles stretching long shadows across the walls. Behind her, the laughter faded. In the distance, the palace clock began to chime. She stopped to listen, and that was when she collided with him. He had been walking swiftly, his mask pushed up to his brow, his expression distracted. The impact made her stumble, and his hands caught her arms before she could fall. "Forgive me," he said, his voice low and startled. She looked up. The flickering light revealed only his mouth and chin beneath the mask, the sharp line of his jaw. His gloved hand lingered just long enough for her pulse to catch fire. "It was my fault," she managed to whisper. Their masks almost touched. A faint fragrance, wildflowers and air after rain, drifted between them. The moment stretched thin, neither moved. He laughed softly, almost in disbelief. "Who are you?" "No one," she said quickly. "Please, I should go." But she didn't. Her feet refused to obey. "Stay," he murmured. "Just a moment." The music from the ballroom softened to a distant hum. They stood in the shadows, two strangers outside the reach of duty. His gaze found hers beneath the mask, steady and unguarded. "You're not afraid of me," he said, sounding surprised. "I should be," she answered. Something in her voice made him smile, a slow, uncertain smile that belonged more to a man than to a prince. He stepped closer, and the air between them grew warmer. Claire's breath trembled. Every part of her knew she should curtsy, retreat, disappear. Yet she didn't move. He lifted a hand, stopping just short of touching her cheek. "I've danced with 100 women tonight," he said, "and none of them looked at me as if I were real." "You shouldn't speak that way," she whispered. "Then tell me your name, and I'll stop." She shook her head. Names have a way of destroying dreams. The clock struck again. 11 chimes now, echoing through the corridor. She could hear the rustle of silk from the ballroom as another dance began. The sound seemed impossibly far away. He leaned closer, his voice barely audible. "Then let me pretend, just once." Claire didn't understand what he meant until his lips brushed hers. It was a quiet, uncertain kiss, like a question asked in secret. For an instant, everything else disappeared. The chandeliers, the titles, the endless rules that divided them. His hand rested lightly against her shoulder, and she felt his heartbeat against her palm. Then the spell broke. She drew back sharply, her breath uneven. "I have to go." "Wait." She turned and ran, the hem of her gown catching on the stone floor. Her shoes slipped, but she didn't stop. She darted through the maze of corridors, her pulse louder than the music. She tore off the mask and pressed it against her chest, terrified and exhilarated all at once. Behind her, the prince stood motionless in the dark. He didn't know her name. He didn't even know if he'd imagined her. But the scent she left behind, those wildflowers, clung to the air. A voice called from the ballroom, faint and formal. "Your Highness, the Queen awaits." He ignored it. He turned toward the corridor where she had vanished, his jaw tightening with something dangerously close to longing. For years he had endured balls, dinners, endless introductions, faces without souls, words without truth. Yet one accidental touch had undone him completely. Who was she? He muttered. No answer came. Only the faint echo of footsteps fading down the marble stairs. Claire reached the servants' wing and pressed her back against the door, gasping for air. The borrowed gown was ruined, the laces tangled. She tore them loose with shaking fingers. Every sound of the palace seemed sharper now, the distant laughter, the closing of doors, the murmur of carriages outside. She had kissed the prince. The thought struck her like lightning. She sank onto a bench, covering her mouth with her hands. What had she done? If anyone had seen them, if anyone recognized her, she would be dismissed, disgraced, maybe worse. Her reflection in the darkened window stared back at her, wide eyes, flushed cheeks, and that faint trace of wildflower scent that still clung to her skin. She could still feel the warmth of his hand. No, she whispered to herself. It meant nothing. It must mean nothing. She unpinned her hair and hid the mask beneath her apron. Tomorrow, she would burn it. Tomorrow she would forget. But sleep never came. She lay awake in the narrow servants' quarters, the moonlight creeping across the floor. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him, the shape of his mouth, the sound of his voice when he said stay. Somewhere above, in his own chamber, the prince stared out at the same moon. He couldn't explain the ache that had taken root in his chest. He had kissed countless women in jest, as courtesy demanded, but never like that, never with wonder. He remembered her voice, low and unsteady, the way she said she was no one. No one, yet he had felt more alive in her presence than in all the glittering years of courtly life. Louis de Valmont, heir to the French throne, was not accustomed to uncertainty, and yet he found himself haunted by it. He rang for his attendant. "Find out who wore a lavender mask tonight." The attendant hesitated. "Your Highness, there were many—" "Then start with every guest," Louis said. "I will not sleep until I know." The man bowed and left. Louis leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. Somewhere the clock struck midnight. He could still taste the faint sweetness of that moment, still feel the pull of something that defied every law he knew. Claire rose before dawn to scrub the marble floors outside the ballroom. The chandeliers still sparkled, though the music had long died. She avoided looking at her reflection in the polished surfaces. Two maids whispered near the stairs. "They say the prince was seen in the west corridor." "With a masked lady." "Yes, he's searching for her now." Claire froze, the brush slipping from her hand. "If he finds her," one of the maids added, "he'll make her his bride." The other laughed. "A prince marrying a stranger? Only in fairy tales." Claire forced herself to move again, her hands trembling as she worked. She could hear her own heartbeat louder than their voices. Later, as she carried linens through the grand gallery, she caught a glimpse of him. The prince. He stood at the far end, speaking to his mother, his expression unreadable. He turned slightly, and for an instant his gaze passed over her. She dropped her eyes immediately, curtsying out of habit. He didn't notice, or perhaps he did and chose not to show it. When he walked away, she felt both relief and loss. By afternoon, word spread through the palace. The prince had ordered an inquiry. Every guest from the masquerade was to describe their attire, their masks, their companions. Claire's throat tightened. She was not on any guest list. She had no right to have been there. That night, she sneaked into the laundry room and pulled the lavender mask from its hiding place. She held it for a long moment, tracing the fabric with her fingers. "What have you done, Claire Dubois?" she whispered. Outside, the wind rattled the shutters. The palace slept. But somewhere in the endless corridors, the prince was awake, pacing the floor, driven by something he couldn't name. His advisor urged him to forget, to focus on his duties. Louis didn't answer. He only stared out the window at the dark gardens, where the echoes of music still seemed to linger. He had touched truth once, and he could not return to the hollow glitter of the court. He stepped onto the balcony, breathing in the cold night air. Beneath the scent of roses and wax, he caught a faint trace of wildflowers again. "She must be found," he whispered, "even if I have to search every shadow in Versailles." The first rays of dawn crept over the horizon, painting the sky pale gold. Claire, exhausted, walked across the servants' courtyard, her apron damp, her hands raw from work. She paused when she heard hoofbeats in the distance, royal messengers setting out on new errands. The palace would soon awaken, and with it all its dangers. She drew the shawl tighter around her shoulders and kept walking, praying that no one would ever know. But the scent of her secret clung stubbornly to the air, following her like fate itself. Louis stood in the doorway of his chamber, the sunlight touching his face. "She's out there," he murmured, half to himself, half to the morning. "And I will find her." The palace stirred long before sunrise. Servants hurried across the marble floors, carrying trays and polished silver. The echoes of the masquerade still floated through the corridors, wrapped in gossip and perfume. Everyone spoke of the same thing: the prince and the mysterious lady he'd kissed in the shadows. Claire kept her eyes down as she moved through the corridors with a silver pot of coffee. Her hands wouldn't stop trembling. Every time someone mentioned the masked woman, she felt as though her heart might burst. "Did you see her?" whispered one of the maids near the stairwell. "They say she wore lavender silk." "Lavender?" another said. "That's hardly proper for a duchess." "Then she must be foreign or scandalous." Claire tried to ignore them, but their words seemed to chase her down every hallway. By the time she reached the prince's private dining room, she could barely breathe. She set the tray down, straightened the silverware, and tried to calm her shaking hands. Through the half-open door she could hear voices. "The king insists," said an older man, the royal advisor. "Your Highness must not be distracted by this fantasy. Whoever she was, she has no place among your kind." Louis's voice answered, firm and quiet. "It isn't a fantasy, Montreuil. I saw her, I spoke to her." "Then she should have been presented properly. There are rules for a reason." "There are rules for cages," Louis said sharply. "Not for hearts." The advisor sighed. "Hearts do not rule kingdoms." Claire froze. She shouldn't have been listening. She took a step back, but her shoe caught on the carpet, and the tray rattled. Both men turned. Louis's gaze landed on her first. He blinked, as if surprised to see a servant standing there. For an instant their eyes met. She dropped her head immediately. "My apologies, Your Highness," she murmured. "The morning coffee." Montreuil gestured impatiently. "Leave it and go." Claire obeyed, her pulse hammering in her throat. As she reached the door, Louis's voice stopped her. "What is your name?" She froze. "Claire, sire." "Claire," he repeated softly, as though testing how it felt on his tongue. "Have you served here long?" "Since I was 14, sire." He nodded, watching her a little too closely. "That will be all." She curtsied and slipped out quickly, her breath unsteady. As soon as the door closed behind her, she leaned against the wall and pressed a hand to her chest. He couldn't know. He mustn't. By mid-morning, the whispers had spread to every corner of Versailles. The Queen, pale and elegant, summoned her ladies-in-waiting to discuss the matter. "The prince has been enchanted," she said, fanning herself slowly. "Find the woman who wore lavender silk last night. Every noble family must account for their daughters." The order ran through the palace like wildfire. Lists were drawn up, names called, gowns examined. Claire's friend Hélène found her in the laundry room, pale and shaking. "They're searching for her," Hélène said in a low voice. "The one he kissed." Claire's hands stilled over the basin. "I know." "Claire, you weren't—" "Don't say it." Hélène bit her lip. "Then you need to hide that gown. If anyone finds out you wore it, it's already hidden," Claire whispered. "In the attic. No one will ever see it again." But no matter how tightly she tried to bury the memory, it lived in her every heartbeat. Each time she passed a polished mirror or heard the sound of the prince's voice echoing down the hall, it came rushing back. That afternoon, she was sent to the great hall to help prepare for the audience the Queen had demanded. Nobles filled the chamber, murmuring behind their masks of civility. Claire carried trays, her head bowed, her eyes fixed on the floor. Louis entered moments later, flanked by guards. The room fell silent. "My son," the Queen began, "your behavior last night has caused confusion. If you will not tell us who she is, we shall find her for you." "I don't know her name," Louis said. His voice carried across the marble like thunder. "But I will know her when I see her." The courtiers exchanged glances. Claire could feel their stares prickling her skin, even from across the room. The Queen raised a delicate brow. How you claim to love a stranger, Louis? Love is not a game. Then perhaps the court has never played it honestly, he replied. Gasps rippled through the hall. The Queen dismissed the attendants with a wave of her fan, trying to mask her irritation. This audience is ended. We will continue our inquiry privately. As the nobles dispersed, Claire moved to collect the empty glasses. She thought she was safe until she felt a shadow fall across her. She looked up, and there he was. Louis stood only a few feet away, studying her face. "You were in the corridor this morning," he said quietly. "Yes, sire," she answered, forcing her voice not to tremble. He hesitated, his gaze lingering. "Do you wear perfume?" "No, sire." He frowned slightly, as if unconvinced. Then someone called his name and he turned away. Claire exhaled shakily and fled down the servants' stairwell. By the next morning, all Versailles was talking. Some said the prince's mystery woman was a duchess from Lorraine. Others claimed she was the daughter of an ambassador. Every version grew more absurd. Claire moved like a ghost among them, invisible yet constantly afraid of being seen. When she entered the kitchens, even the cook was gossiping. "They say His Highness refused breakfast," he told the scullery boys. "He's in love." Hélène rolled her eyes. "Princes don't fall in love. They marry titles." Claire kept scrubbing the copper pots, her heart pounding faster with every word. In the afternoon, she was assigned to carry linens to the upper floors. As she passed the grand staircase, a sudden commotion made her stop. A messenger rushed by with a parchment sealed in gold. Servants whispered that the prince had ordered every musician, artist, and guest from the ball to be questioned personally. He wasn't giving up. She reached the gallery just as a group of noblewomen passed, laughing behind their fans. One of them, the Marquise de Beaulieu, turned her sharp eyes toward Claire. "You there," she said. "What's your name?" "Claire, milady." "You look familiar," the Marquise said slowly. "Were you in the ballroom last night?" Claire's throat went dry. "Only to serve, milady." The Marquise studied her for another moment before smiling faintly. Perhaps I imagined it." When the women moved on, Claire nearly collapsed against the wall. Every word, every look felt like a noose tightening. That evening she knelt by her bed, whispering prayers she had almost forgotten. She asked for forgiveness, though she wasn't sure what sin she'd committed, stealing a moment or daring to feel it. Above her, the bells of the chapel rang the 9th hour. Louis sat alone in his study, the fire burning low. On the table before him lay sketches of masks collected by his attendants. None were right. None had that simple lavender silk, that lightness that haunted him. Montreuil entered quietly. "Your Highness, this search is creating unrest. The court expects you to name your bride by the end of the season." Louis didn't look up. "Then the court will wait." Montreuil sighed. "And if the Queen refuses? Then I'll remind her that a crown without a heart is just metal." The advisor bowed, defeated. When he was gone, Louis rose and walked to the window. Beyond the gardens, torches flickered in the servants' courtyard. Somewhere out there, the scent of wildflowers lingered. He could almost feel her presence, faint but constant, like the echo of a song he couldn't stop hearing. He didn't know that the same wind carried his name to Claire, whispering through the open window of the laundry room. "Claire," Hélène whispered behind her, "the prince is searching for the lady again. The whole palace knows." "I know," Claire said quietly. "Then you must stay away from him. Don't go near the royal wing." "I won't." But fate didn't listen. The next day, Claire was ordered to deliver a tray of letters to the prince's chamber. She tried to protest, but the headmaid insisted. "He asked for someone trustworthy. You'll go." Her legs felt heavy as she climbed the grand staircase. Every step brought back the memory of that kiss, the heat, the fear, the impossible sweetness of it. When she reached the door, she knocked softly. "Enter," came his voice. She pushed the door open and kept her eyes on the floor. "The correspondence, sire." He looked up from his desk, surprised. "You again." "I was sent, Your Highness." He rose and took the letters from her hands. Their fingers brushed. The contact was brief, but it sent a shock through both of them. "Tell me," he said after a pause. "Were you at the ball?" Claire's heart stopped. "No, sire. I was attending to the laundry." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Strange. You smell of the same flowers I remember from that night." She froze, searching for words. "Perhaps the gardens, sire. The linens are dried near the fields." He said nothing for a long time. Then, finally, he nodded. That must be it. She curtsied quickly, turning toward the door. Wait, he said softly. She stopped. He stepped closer, his voice lowering. If I asked you to look at me, without the rules, without the masks, would you? Claire's throat tightened. I don't understand, sire. I think you do. Her hands shook. Please, Your Highness. I'm only a servant. You say that as if it means you feel less. Before she could answer, footsteps echoed down the corridor. Montreuil appeared in the doorway, bowing. Your Highness, the Queen wishes to see you. Louis stepped back immediately. Very well. Claire seized the moment to escape. She hurried down the stairs, her pulse racing, her mind spinning. Hélène found her in the laundry room, pale and silent. Claire, what happened? Nothing, she whispered. Nothing at all. But her trembling hands betrayed her. Later, as the palace quieted, Claire walked alone through the dark hallways, carrying linens to the servants' quarters. From the grand staircase she heard voices, nobles murmuring about the search, the prince, the unknown woman. His Highness is obsessed, someone said. He claims he'll find her before the weekends. Another laughed softly. Perhaps she hides under his nose. Claire's breath caught. She pressed herself against the wall, willing her heart to calm. Then, suddenly, a door opened behind her. Claire, said a familiar voice. She turned, startled, the bundle of linens slipping from her arms. The prince stood there, his expression unreadable. For a heartbeat, neither of them spoke. The corridor was silent except for the faint hum of distant music. Then he stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. Tell me, Claire, he said, his eyes fixed on hers. Why do you tremble every time I look at you? Claire's breath caught. The corridor felt smaller, the candlelight dimmer. Louis's eyes were fixed on her, curious and searching, as if he could peel away every lie she'd wrapped around herself. I'm not trembling, she whispered. He smiled faintly. You are. It's only the cold, sire. There's no cold in this palace, he said quietly. Only secrets. She lowered her gaze, clutching the bundle of linens against her chest. Please, Your Highness, I should go. He took a slow step closer, his tone gentler now. You fear me. Why? Because I know my place. Then tell me, Claire, he said. What place do you think I have? She hesitated. Above everyone. He shook his head. No, I was born there, perhaps, but I don't belong there. Before she could answer, footsteps echoed from the far end of the hall. Claire stepped back immediately, but Louis's hand brushed hers as if to stop her. The brief touch made her heart stumble. Go, he whispered, before someone sees. She fled down the corridor, her pulse still echoing his words. Louis watched her disappear, his jaw tightening. The sound of approaching boots drew his attention. His advisor again. Your Highness, said Montreuil, bowing stiffly. The Queen insists you attend the council meeting. Louis didn't move. Tell her I'll come shortly. She also requests that you abandon this search. It's becoming talk of every salon in Paris. I don't care what they say, Montreuil sighed. Your father once said the same, about the Duchess of Savoy, and you remember how that ended. Louis turned away. I am not my father. Nor are you free, Montreuil murmured, but the prince was already walking past him. Later that morning, the great hall filled again with noble families, all hoping to be noticed. Louis sat at the top of the staircase, his expression unreadable. Ladies curtsied, masks glittered, perfumes mixed in the air, but none carried that scent he sought. Your Highness, Montreuil whispered beside him, there are still 50 more to present. Louis leaned back. 50, 100, 1,000. It won't matter, the advisor frowned. You believe you'll recognize her? I'll know her, Louis said simply, even if she wears another face. Down below, Claire stood with the servants along the wall, helping to pass refreshments. She moved carefully, avoiding his gaze. But when she glanced up, his eyes were already on her. She froze. For a single, unbearable heartbeat, the hall disappeared around them. He looked at her, not as a prince surveying his staff, but as a man recognizing something he'd lost. Then Montreuil leaned in, whispering something, and Louis looked away. The spell broke. Claire, Hélène hissed from behind her. He saw you. No, Claire whispered. He was just looking at the crowd. Hélène's eyes were wide. If he remembers, he won't. But her voice didn't sound convincing. That night she couldn't sleep. The moonlight streamed across the small window, turning her white apron pale silver. She replayed his words again and again. Secrets, places, freedom. What could a prince know about cages? In another wing, Louis sat alone in his study, staring at a folded piece of parchment. It was a letter he had written to no one, a confession he would never send. He wanted to tell her that her silence haunted him more than any conversation ever had. Montreuil entered again unannounced. "You look exhausted, sire." Louis smiled faintly. "Does love ever let a man rest?" "Love?" Montreuil raised an eyebrow. "You've seen her once. Once was enough," the advisor sighed. "The Queen plans to invite all the noble families from Lyon next week. Perhaps one of them—" "No." Louis stood abruptly. "Stop arranging faces for me to forget." Montreuil bowed stiffly. "Then what do you propose, sire?" Louis looked toward the window, toward the dark courtyard below. "I'll find her myself." The following morning, servants whispered about the prince walking through the lower halls, something unheard of. He claimed he wished to inspect the kitchens, the stables, the laundries. But every step was a search. Claire nearly dropped her basket when she saw him at the far end of the corridor. He was speaking with the steward, his expression polite but distracted. The closer he came, the faster her pulse raced. She turned to leave, but Hélène caught her sleeve. "Don't run. It'll look suspicious." "I can't stay here. You'll draw more attention if you flee." Too late. Louis was already beside them. He stopped, his gaze flicking between the two maids. "Good morning." "Good morning, Your Highness," Hélène said quickly, curtsying. Claire followed suit, her eyes fixed on the floor. Louis tilted his head slightly. "Tell me, what are your names?" "Hélène, sire, and this is Claire." He smiled faintly. "Ah, yes, Claire, we've met." Her throat tightened. "Briefly, sire." He nodded, as if thinking deeply. "You smell of wildflowers again." Hélène blinked. "Shall we dry the linens near the meadows, Your Highness?" Louis's eyes lingered on Claire. "A pleasant scent." She forced a polite smile. "If Your Highness will excuse us, we must finish our work." He stepped aside, but his gaze followed her as she walked away. When she turned the corner, she nearly collapsed against the wall. Hélène grabbed her arm. "He suspects." "I know. What will you do?" "Nothing," Claire whispered. "Nothing at all. He'll forget me soon." But Louis didn't forget. That afternoon he summoned Montreuil. "There's a maid named Claire Dubois," he said. "I want to know everything about her." Montreuil frowned. "A servant, sire." "Surely you don't mean—" "I mean exactly what I said. Sire, this could end badly. If the court— I'll handle the court. You handle the questions." The advisor hesitated, then bowed. "As you wish." By nightfall, Claire sensed something had changed. People glanced at her differently, curious but cautious. The head maid questioned her about her duties, her background, her family. Claire answered quietly, pretending calm. Later, Hélène burst into the laundry room, breathless. "He's asking about you." Claire turned sharply. "Who?" "The prince. Montreuil's men are making inquiries, where you were born, who you serve. Claire, they know your name." Her heart dropped. "I have to leave." "Leave? You can't. They'll think you're guilty of something." "Then what do I do?" Hélène took her hands. "Say nothing. Act normal. Maybe he only wants to thank you." Claire almost laughed at that. "Thank me? For lying?" The next day passed in unbearable tension. Louis walked through the halls again, speaking kindly to every servant, but always glancing toward her when he thought she wouldn't notice. Montreuil returned that evening, holding a folded report. "Claire Dubois," he said. "Born near Rouen, daughter of a farmer. Entered service at 14. No record of noble blood." Louis read the words without expression. "And yet she carries herself differently." "She's a maid, sire, nothing more." "Nothing more," Louis repeated softly. "And yet everything feels less without her." Montreuil sighed. "Your Highness, may I remind you, if the Queen suspects even a whisper of this, she'll dismiss the girl before sunset. Then we'll have to give her no reason to suspect." That night, the palace glittered again with light. Another small gathering, another excuse for nobles to gossip. Claire moved through the crowd unseen, serving wine, collecting empty goblets. She could feel Louis's presence long before she saw him. He stood near the orchestra, surrounded by ladies trying to catch his attention. But his gaze kept wandering, searching. When it found her, he smiled slightly, a secret smile no one else would notice. Claire turned away, pretending to arrange a tray. Her hands shook. She knew she shouldn't stay, but something held her there. Montreuil leaned toward the prince. "Your Highness, the Queen is watching. Let her. She already suspects the maid." Louis's smile faded. "Then keep her name out of the rumors." Claire moved toward the doors, her heart pounding. She needed air. She stepped into the corridor, the cool silence swallowing the music behind her. She barely made it a few steps before a voice stopped her. "Claire!" She turned. Louis stood there, his expression unreadable, the candlelight casting gold across his face. "I didn't mean to frighten you," he said softly. "I only wanted to speak." "You shouldn't," she whispered. "Someone will see. Let them. I've spent my life being seen. Not once have I felt known." "Please, sire, I can't." "You can," he said. "Tell me the truth. Were you at the ball?" Her lips parted, but no sound came. He stepped closer. "Just one answer. Yes or no?" She looked up, trembling. "If I say yes, what happens?" "I don't know," he said. "Perhaps everything begins." Her breath caught. "And if I say no?" He smiled sadly. "Then I'll keep looking for a ghost." She almost spoke, almost told him everything, but voices echoed from the ballroom. She stepped back, her hands shaking. "Please, Your Highness, don't ask me again." He watched her go, frustration and longing twisting in his chest. Later that night, Montreuil found him on the balcony. "Sire," he said, "the Queen has ordered a formal announcement. Tomorrow she'll require your word that the search is over." Louis's expression hardened. "Then tomorrow I'll lie." "Sire!" He turned away, staring at the stars above Versailles. "She's here, Montreuil. I can feel it, and I won't stop until I find her." Montreuil hesitated. "And if she's not who you hope?" Louis's voice was quiet. "Then she'll still be the only truth I've ever known." Far below, in the servants' wing, Claire sat awake by candlelight. Her fingers touched the folded lavender mask hidden under her pillow. She knew he wouldn't stop. She knew the danger grew with every heartbeat. A knock startled her. Helene slipped inside, her eyes wide with fear. "Claire," she whispered, "you need to know. Montreuil spoke your name to the prince tonight." Claire's hand froze over the mask. Helene swallowed hard. "He said he was sure you were the one." Claire's world tilted. She rose slowly, her voice barely a breath. "Then it's only a matter of time." Helene caught her arm. "You have to hide. Right now." Claire turned toward the door, her heart pounding so hard she could barely think, when she heard heavy footsteps approaching down the corridor. 2 guards, followed by the sound of Montreuil's voice calling her name. Claire's heart pounded so loud she thought the guards could hear it through the door. Helene's grip tightened on her wrist. The footsteps drew closer, echoing in the corridor like approaching thunder. "Claire Dubois!" Montreuil's voice was sharp, formal, leaving no room for denial. "By order of His Highness, you are summoned." Helene whispered. "Don't go. Run through the laundry hall, out the back." "I can't," Claire said, breathless. "If I run, they'll think I'm guilty." "You are guilty," Helene hissed, terrified, "of touching what no one should touch." The door opened. Montreuil stood in the frame, 2 guards behind him. His expression was polite but cold. "Miss Dubois, His Highness wishes to speak with you." "Now." Claire's throat was dry. "Am I in trouble?" Montreuil's smile didn't reach his eyes. "That depends entirely on what you tell him." She followed them through the dim corridors, her steps small and unsteady. Servants glanced up as she passed, their whispers chasing after her. She felt their stares like invisible hands pressing on her back. They stopped before a small study near the royal apartments. Montreuil gestured toward the door. Inside, Claire entered. The prince stood near the window, his hands clasped behind his back. He turned as the door closed. "You may leave us," Louis said to Montreuil. "Your Highness—" "I said leave us." Montreuil bowed stiffly and withdrew. Silence fell. Only the faint sound of rain against the glass broke it. Louis studied her for a long moment. "You look frightened." "I was summoned," she said quietly. "Anyone would be." "Did you think I meant to punish you?" "I don't know what to think, sire." He took a step closer. "Then let me help you think. When I first saw you, you trembled. When I spoke to you, You ran. When I sent for you, you came as if walking to your own trial. Why? Because I'm a servant, she said, her voice shaking, and you are a prince. He smiled faintly. That explains nothing. I've spoken to many servants. None look at me as you do. Claire turned her face away. Perhaps your highness sees what he wishes to see. Perhaps, he murmured. Or perhaps I see the truth no one else dares to show me. She said nothing. He moved closer until they were a breath apart. Claire, he said softly, tell me what perfume you wear. Her hands clenched in her apron. None, sire. The scent of wildflowers doesn't appear by magic, he said. It's the soap from the washroom. He leaned in, searching her eyes. And the mask I found near the corridor after the ball, was that by accident too? She froze. Mask? Yes. Lavender silk, torn ribbon. Her breath caught. You found it? I did. His voice lowered. And I've wondered ever since who it belonged to. Claire couldn't speak. He stepped back slightly as if sensing her panic. I won't force you to answer, he said. But know this. Whoever that woman was, she changed everything. She shouldn't have, Claire whispered. She had no right. Louis smiled sadly. Then she's a fool, because she had every right. The silence between them stretched thin. Then a knock broke it. Montreuil's voice came through the door. Your Highness, the Queen requests your presence immediately. Louis sighed. Tell her I'll come. Claire stepped back, grateful for the interruption. May I go, sire? He hesitated. For now. She curtsied quickly and slipped out, nearly colliding with Montreuil in the corridor. His eyes narrowed as he watched her hurry away. Inside, the prince spoke without turning. Yes, Montreuil. You risk much for a servant, the advisor said. I risk nothing worth keeping, Louis replied. Montreuil frowned. If the Queen learns that you summon maids in secret, she'll assume what she always does, and she'll act accordingly. You may not care for your crown, sire, but she does. Louis turned sharply. Then let her keep it. I never asked for it. Montreuil's face tightened. Words like that can end thrones. Louis looked toward the rain again. Then perhaps the throne deserves to end. While the palace buzzed with rumors, Claire worked silently in the servants' wing. Her thoughts wouldn't stop spinning. He knew. Maybe not all, but enough to destroy her. That evening the air was heavy with tension. The Queen herself appeared in the kitchens, flanked by her ladies. The servants lined up in rows, bowing. My son, the Queen said, her voice like polished glass, believes a maid from this household holds the key to a mystery. I wish to see every woman in service. Claire's knees went weak. She could feel Hélène's hand trembling next to hers. One by one the Queen walked past them, her eyes sharp as a blade. When she reached Claire, she paused. Your name? Claire Dubois, Your Majesty. You've served here long? Yes, Majesty. The Queen studied her face. Do you know why my son asks for you? No, Majesty. The Queen's eyes narrowed slightly, but she moved on. Claire released her breath only when the doors closed behind them. That night, the servants whispered about the inspection. The Queen's furious, one said. She'll find that woman, whoever she is. She'll send her away, said another. Or worse. Claire pretended not to hear. She kept working until her hands ached, anything to stop thinking. But when the palace grew quiet, she slipped away to the attic. The mask was still there, hidden beneath an old trunk. She lifted it, staring at the fabric. The ribbon was torn, just as he'd said. A sound behind her made her jump. She turned. Hélène stood in the doorway. You shouldn't be here, Hélène whispered. If someone finds you with that... They already suspect, Claire said. He knows it was me. Hélène's eyes widened. The prince? Claire nodded. He hasn't said it, but he knows. Then you have to be careful. The Queen won't allow this. Claire's fingers tightened around the mask. He's not like the others, Hélène. He's worse, Hélène said softly. Because he has the power to ruin you without meaning to. Claire said nothing. She tucked the mask back under the trunk and closed the lid. The next morning, a messenger announced that the prince would hold another ball, by royal decree. The palace erupted with excitement. Claire felt the world tilt beneath her feet. They say he hopes to find her, one maid said dreamily, the mysterious lady of the masquerade. Claire could barely stand. Every bell in Versailles seemed to toll for her. When the day of the ball arrived, the palace shimmered again with candlelight. The grand staircase glowed like gold. Servants ran everywhere, arranging flowers, polishing silver. Claire worked silently, praying no one would notice her shaking hands. Louis entered the hall dressed in deep blue velvet, the color of twilight. He greeted the guests with practiced grace, but his eyes never stopped searching. Montreuil leaned toward him. "If you find her, sire, then what?" "Then I'll stop pretending I live." Montreuil sighed. "And if she's not a duchess or princess, then perhaps that's why I love her." The music began. Couples filled the floor, masks flashing in the candlelight. Claire moved along the edges of the crowd, carrying a tray of champagne. She could feel his presence even before she saw him. Louis turned, and their eyes met across the room. For a heartbeat, the noise vanished. She looked away quickly, almost dropping the tray. The Marquise de Beaulieu noticed. She followed Claire's line of sight and saw the prince watching the maid. A smile curved on her painted lips. "So that's the secret," she murmured. "A servant dares to charm a prince." Later, when Claire passed near her, the Marquise stopped her. "Careful, child," she said sweetly. "The higher the candle, the quicker it burns out." Claire bowed. "Yes, milady." The Marquise's smile sharpened. "Tell me, where did you get that scent? It's familiar." "It's nothing, milady." "Soap, soap. How curious." The Marquise's eyes glittered. "Enjoy the evening, little dove." Claire hurried away, her stomach twisting. The music swelled again, louder, brighter. Louis moved through the crowd as if drawn by instinct. He stopped near the servants' table, pretending to reach for a drink, but his eyes were only on her. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered when he drew close. "Neither should you," he said. "This is madness, sire. Someone will see." "Let them, please," she said, stepping back. "You don't understand the danger. Then explain it to me." She shook her head. "I can't." The Marquise's voice cut through the air, light and cruel. "Your Highness," she called from across the room, "have you found your mysterious lady yet?" Louis glanced toward her, forcing a smile. "Not yet, my lady." "Well," she said, lifting her glass, "perhaps she hides among your servants." Laughter rippled through the guests. Claire's face burned. She set the tray down and fled toward the corridor. Louis followed, ignoring the whispers behind him. He caught up with her near the grand staircase. "Claire, wait." She turned, tears in her eyes. "Please stop, Your Highness. This can only end badly." "Then let it end," he said. "But tell me the truth first. Were you the one that night?" Her silence was answer enough. Louis exhaled shakily. "I knew it. Forget it ever happened," she pleaded. "It was a mistake. It was the only thing in my life that felt real." The Marquise appeared at the top of the stairs, watching them with cold satisfaction. "Your Highness," she said loudly, "what an odd place for conversation." Claire turned, startled. Guests nearby began to murmur. The Marquise smiled. "I wonder," she said sweetly, "if this young woman might be the one you've been searching for." Claire's heart stopped. Louis stepped in front of her. "Enough, Marquise." "Oh, come now, sire," she said. "Everyone's curious. Why not let us see if the mystery ends here?" Claire backed away, trembling. The Marquise's eyes glittered with triumph. "Tell me, little maid," she said, "do you still have the lavender mask?" Claire's mouth went dry. She couldn't move. Louis turned toward her, his voice barely a whisper. "Claire, what is she talking about?" Claire's vision blurred. Around her the crowd had gathered, hungry for scandal. The Marquise leaned in, her voice like a knife. "Show us, then. Show us the mask you've kept hidden." Claire's knees weakened. She felt the weight of every gaze, every whisper, every cruel smile closing in around her. And then, from the far end of the hall, the Queen's voice cut through the chaos. "What is the meaning of this?" The hall froze at the Queen's voice. Her gown shimmered like frost as she descended the marble steps, her gaze sweeping over the crowd. The Marquise bowed deeply, her smile vanishing. Claire stood motionless, her face pale beneath the chandeliers. Louis moved instinctively to shield her, his body tense. "Explain," the Queen commanded, "at once." The Marquise straightened, her tone honeyed and trembling with false innocence. "Your Majesty, we were only teasing. The Prince has spoken so often of a masked lady from the last ball, and it seemed this maid reacted rather strongly when I mentioned it." Whispers rippled through the hall. The Queen's cold eyes settled on Claire. "Your name?" "Claire Dubois, Your Majesty." "And what business have you at a gathering meant for the nobility?" "I serve, Majesty," Claire answered quietly. "I bring the wine." The Queen's attention flicked toward her son. "Louis, this is beneath you. Explain this scene." Louis's voice was calm but defiant. "There is nothing to explain. The Marquise's imagination has gotten the better of her." The Marquise flushed. "I saw them together, Majesty." "That's enough," Louis said sharply. But the Queen's curiosity was piqued. "Together? In what manner?" The Marquise hesitated, then smiled faintly. "In the manner of two who share a secret." Gasps, murmurs. Every eye turned to Claire. Her knees trembled. Louis stepped forward. "This is slander." "Then let us clear it up," the Queen said. "Remove her mask if she wears one, and we shall see if your mysterious lady truly hides in the servants' wing." Claire shook her head, whispering, "Please, Majesty, I've done nothing wrong." "Enough!" the Queen snapped. "Guards!" "Mother," Louis said firmly, "I forbid it." The silence that followed was sharper than a blade. The Queen turned slowly. "You forbid it?" "I do. This girl is under my protection." The Marquise smiled faintly, sensing victory in the scandal. The courtiers murmured louder. Claire could barely breathe. "Protection," the Queen repeated. "From whom exactly?" Louis met her gaze. "From the cruelty of this court." The Queen's fan snapped shut. "We will discuss this privately." She turned to the guests. "The evening is over." Within moments, the hall erupted in whispers and movement. The musicians stopped playing. The nobles scattered, hungry to repeat every word they'd heard. The Marquise lingered at the edge of the room, her expression satisfied. When the hall emptied, the Queen faced her son again. "You will come to my chambers immediately." Louis hesitated, then turned to Claire. "Go back to your quarters. Do not speak to anyone." She nodded shakily. He watched her disappear into the shadows before following his mother out. In the servants' wing, Claire collapsed onto a bench. Helene rushed to her side. "What happened?" "They know," Claire whispered. "Everyone knows." "Did he defend you?" "Yes." Helene's eyes widened. "Then it's worse than I thought." Meanwhile, in the Queen's chambers, the tension was suffocating. The Queen stood before the fire, her back rigid. Louis faced her, unflinching. "You humiliated me before the entire court," she said coldly, "over a servant." "I defended an innocent girl." "You defended your own foolishness." She turned to him. "You risk your reputation, your crown, your bloodline for a maid." "I risk nothing I value." Her voice rose. "You think this is love? It's infatuation born of boredom. You will forget her. I won't. Then I will see to it she is gone by morning." Louis's expression hardened. "If she leaves, I leave." The Queen stared at him in disbelief. "You dare threaten your own mother." "I dare protect what matters to me." She stepped closer, her voice low and sharp. "You are the heir to France. You do not belong to yourself. You belong to the throne." "Then the throne owns a heart it can't command." She slapped him. The sound echoed in the chamber. For a long moment, neither moved. Finally, she whispered, "You will regret this." He bowed slightly. "Perhaps, but not as much as I'd regret silence." He left her standing by the fire, trembling with rage. The next morning, rumors filled the palace. Some said the prince had lost his senses. Others said the Queen planned to send the maid away before nightfall. Claire heard none of it directly, but she saw the looks. The headmaid barely spoke to her. Servants who once shared bread now turned away. Helene brought her a piece of bread and sat beside her. "They'll send you away," she said softly. "You should pack now." "I can't just leave," Claire whispered. "He told me to wait." "Then he's a fool." Claire shook her head. "He's kind." "Kindness doesn't survive here," Helene said. "Not in this palace." Later that day, Louis found her in the courtyard, pretending to scrub the steps. He motioned for her to rise. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly. "No, sire," she said honestly. He smiled faintly. "Nor am I." "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "They'll see." "I don't care who sees. I'm done hiding." She looked at him, desperate. "You can't protect me from them." "Watch me." He took her hand. The contact was quick, almost invisible, but someone saw. A shadow moved behind a column. The Marquise. She turned and walked away, a knowing smile curving her lips. That evening a summons came for Claire. The Queen demanded her presence. Hélène helped her straighten her dress, whispering prayers under her breath. "Be polite," Hélène begged. "Say nothing that could sound proud." Claire nodded and followed the guard to the royal apartments. The Queen sat by the window, embroidery in her hands, her expression unreadable. "You know why you're here," the Queen said. "Yes, Majesty." "Then speak. Did you attend the masquerade?" Claire hesitated. "I served that night, Majesty. That wasn't my question." Claire's hands twisted in her apron. "I wore a gown only for an hour. It was not my place." "I meant no harm." The Queen studied her face. "Do you love him?" Claire's breath caught. "I serve him, Majesty. That wasn't my question either." Claire's silence was answer enough. The Queen sighed. "Then you are either brave or very foolish." "Both, perhaps," Claire said softly. A faint smile ghosted across the Queen's face before vanishing. "I should have you dismissed. That is what the court expects. But my son has made himself clear. He believes himself in love." Claire dared to lift her gaze. "Then I will go willingly, Majesty. I won't bring shame upon him." The Queen's eyes softened just for an instant. "You would leave?" "Yes, if it would spare him." The Queen rose slowly. "Then perhaps you are wiser than he is." She turned away. "Go. Do not speak of this conversation to anyone." Claire curtsied deeply and fled. When Louis learned of it, he stormed into his mother's chambers. "You spoke to her?" "I did," she said calmly, "and she agreed to leave." He paled. "You can't send her away." "I didn't have to." She offered. "She belongs here. She belongs wherever scandal cannot touch her. She belongs with me." The Queen met his anger with silence. Then, quietly, she said, "You are not ready to be the man she deserves." Louis froze. For a moment the certainty drained from him. He turned and left without another word. By evening the servants whispered that the maid would be gone by dawn. Claire packed her few belongings in silence. Hélène wept quietly beside her. "So you'll find peace at least," Hélène said. "There's no peace in leaving what you love," Claire replied. A soft knock came at the door. It was Louis. "Hélène, leave us," he said gently. When they were alone, he stepped closer. "You can't go." "I must. I'll stop them. You can't fight everyone." "I'll fight anyone," he said. "Even my mother." "Then she'll hate you." "She already does." Claire shook her head, tears glistening in her eyes. "Louis, please. You have a kingdom to think of. I have nothing but my life. Let me keep that." He reached into his coat and pulled out the lavender mask. "I kept this," he said quietly, "because it reminded me that for one night I was free." She touched the mask, her fingers trembling, "And for one night I wasn't afraid." He took her hand again, desperate. "Run with me. Tonight, before they can stop us." Her eyes widened. "You can't mean it." "I do. I'll renounce it all if I must." The door opened suddenly. Montreuil stood there, his face pale. "Your Highness," he said quickly, "the Queen knows you're here." Louis turned. "Then she'll hear me say it. I choose Claire Dubois." Montreuil's expression was grim. "Then you've chosen exile." Claire's voice broke. "No, please don't." The sound of hurried footsteps echoed down the corridor, guards approaching. Louis squeezed her hand once, hard. "Trust me," he whispered. "I'll find a way." The door burst open. Claire backed away, the lavender mask slipping from her fingers to the floor. "Take her to her quarters," Montreuil ordered, "and keep her there until morning." Louis started forward, but two guards stepped between them. Claire's eyes met his one last time as they led her away, her voice barely audible. "Don't follow me." He didn't listen. He stood frozen in the corridor, watching until the doors closed behind her. Then he turned to Montreuil, his voice cold and sure. "Prepare my horse. Tonight I ride for her." The palace slept beneath a grey dawn, but Louis did not. He stood by the stables, his cloak heavy with dew, his horse restless beneath the bridle. The guards had been dismissed under pretense of inspection. Only Montreuil remained, tense and disapproving. "You can't ride out now," Montreuil said. "Every eye in Versailles is awake with gossip." "Then let them talk," Louis answered. "They always do." "And if you're caught leaving?" "Then they'll have their scandal." Montreuil stepped closer. If you love her, protect her by staying away. Let the storm pass. Louis met his gaze. The storm is already here. Before Montreuil could reply, Louis swung onto the horse and galloped into the mist. The sound of hooves echoed through the courtyard like thunder swallowed by fog. Inside the palace, Claire sat in a small chamber under guard. She hadn't slept. The candle had burned out hours ago, but she stayed by the window, waiting for a sign, any sign that this nightmare would end. Hélène slipped in quietly, carrying a loaf of bread. "You shouldn't be awake," she whispered. "They'll check on you soon." "I can't close my eyes," Claire said softly. "Every time I do, I see him." Hélène looked at her with pity. "He's a prince, Claire. Princes don't come for us." Claire forced a faint smile. "Then perhaps he's not a very good prince." A knock startled them. The door opened, revealing Montreuil. His expression was grave. "Leave us," he said to Hélène. When the maid was gone, he turned to Claire. "His Highness has gone after you." Claire's eyes widened. "What?" "He left before dawn. The Queen believes he intends to defy her orders." "I never asked him to—" "No one believes that," Montreuil interrupted. "The court thinks you've bewitched him." Claire's stomach twisted. "I've done nothing but try to survive." "I believe you," Montreuil said quietly. "But belief doesn't matter in Versailles. Appearances do." She took a trembling step forward. "Where did he go?" "Toward the West Road. He means to find a way to see you before you're sent away." Claire shook her head. "He'll be ruined." Montreuil's eyes softened. "Then stop him before he ruins himself." He unlocked the door and stepped aside. "Go. Now. Before the Queen realizes you're gone. The guards are changing shifts." She hesitated. "Why are you helping me?" "Because I've seen men destroy kingdoms for less than love," he said, "and I'd rather not see him do the same." Claire nodded once and fled into the corridor. The palace was half awake, the servants bustling to prepare for morning duties. Claire kept her head down, moving swiftly through side halls and hidden staircases until she reached the servants' gate. The guard there barely looked up when she passed. Montreuil's orders must have reached him. Outside, the world was wet and grey. The road stretched before her, slick with rain. She ran. Hours later, she found him by a grove near the western woods, his horse tied to a tree. He turned at the sound of her footsteps, relief flashing across his face. "Claire," he said, crossing the space between them. "Thank God. You shouldn't be here," she said, breathless. "They'll come for you. Let them." "You'll lose everything." "I've already lost it," he said quietly. "If I can't have truth, then the crown is only gold and dust." She looked at him, torn between fear and something deeper. "You don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying." He took her hands, his voice urgent. "Come with me. We can ride until the border. There's a convent beyond Lyon. No one would look for us there." "Louis, please." She tried to pull away. "This isn't a fairy tale." "No," he said. "It's real. For once, it's real." Before she could answer, the distant sound of hooves cut through the morning mist. Louis turned sharply. "They followed me." Claire's fear returned like ice. "You have to go back. I won't leave you. You must. Not again." The horses came into view, 4 guards, the royal insignia shining on their breastplates. Montreuil rode with them, his expression grim. Louis cursed under his breath. "He betrayed us." "No," Claire said quickly. "He warned me. He's trying to stop this before it's too late." The guards halted. Montreuil dismounted first. "Your Highness," he said, "I beg you. Return before the Queen sends more men." Louis stepped in front of Claire. "You'll have to drag me back." "I will, if I must," Montreuil said quietly. "But don't make her suffer for your defiance." Louis clenched his fists. "She's done nothing wrong. Then let her prove it by letting you go." Claire's voice trembled. "He's right." Louis turned to her. "Don't. I can't let you throw away everything for me." "You are everything." The words hung in the air like thunder waiting to break. Montreuil's tone softened. "If you love her, then protect her from this madness. The Queen won't rest until the scandal is erased. You'll both be destroyed." Louis's jaw tightened. "If she's sent away, I'll follow. And where will you go? The world beyond these gates isn't made for princes who run from crowns." Claire touched his arm gently. "Please, go back. Say I escaped you. Let them think you were tricked." He looked at her, torn. "I can't." "You must," she whispered. "For me." Montreuil stepped closer. "Your Highness." Listen to her. For a long moment no one spoke. Then Louis exhaled shakily and nodded once. "You'll be safe?" Claire smiled faintly. "As safe as I can be." He reached for her hand and pressed something into it. A small golden pin, shaped like a lily. "Keep it," he said. "So, you'll know I meant every word." Then he turned to Montreuil. "You have my word. I'll return." Montreuil nodded. "And I'll make sure she disappears before the court can touch her." The guards remained still as Louis mounted his horse again. He looked back once, his eyes meeting Claire's. Then he rode away through the mist, the sound of hooves fading into the rain. Montreuil approached her. "We have little time. The Queen will send more men once she learns he returned alone." Claire held the pin tightly. "Where will I go?" "There's a carriage waiting at the back road. It'll take you north to a small village. From there you can find work. No one will ask questions." She nodded slowly. "Thank you." "Don't thank me," Montreuil said. "Just stay hidden." He helped her into the carriage and gave the driver quiet instructions. As the wheels began to turn, Claire looked back toward the forest one last time. The mist had swallowed Louis completely. By evening she reached the village, a quiet place of cobblestone streets and low cottages. The driver left her at an inn by the fields. The innkeeper's wife gave her a room and asked no questions. That night, Claire sat by the small window, listening to the wind. She still smelled faintly of wildflowers, though she hadn't touched them in days. In Versailles, the Queen faced her son with ice in her voice. "You would defy your mother, your country, your crown, all for a servant?" Louis stood silent. "You will forget her," the Queen said, "or I will see that she disappears forever." He lifted his head slowly. "You already made her disappear." The Queen's expression faltered. "She left of her own will. Because you gave her none. You think me cruel? I think you afraid," he said. "Afraid of a love you can't control." Her hand trembled, but she turned away. "Enough. The court expects your attendance tomorrow. You'll announce your engagement to the Marquise de Beaulieu." Louise's voice hardened. "Never. You will," she said, her tone final. "For the crown, if not for me." He walked to the door. "If I must stand before them, I'll tell them the truth instead. Louis—" He stopped. "I loved a woman once, not because she was noble, but because she was kind. You'll hear her name again, Mother, because I'll never stop saying it." The door closed behind him. Far from Versailles, Claire worked quietly at the inn, scrubbing floors and tending fires. Weeks passed. The villagers were kind but curious. She said little, keeping her past buried under silence. Every night she took out the golden pin and stared at it in the candlelight. Sometimes she thought she heard his voice in the wind outside the window. Then, one evening, a stranger arrived at the inn, a man in a dark coat with the insignia of the royal house. He approached the counter and asked the innkeeper for a room. When Claire brought him water, he spoke softly. "Your name is Claire Dubois?" Her heart stopped. "Who asks?" "An old friend," he said. He handed her a folded letter sealed with the royal crest. Her fingers shook as she opened it. The words were written in Louis's hand. "They will crown me before winter, but I'll keep my promise. I'll find you before the bells ring for the new year." Her eyes filled with tears. "When did he write this?" 2 days ago, the man said. "He wanted you to know he hasn't forgotten." She pressed the letter to her heart. "Thank you." Outside, snow began to fall over the village, soft and silent. She stood at the window, watching it cover the fields. Back in Versailles, Montreuil entered the Queen's chamber quietly. "Your Majesty, the prince prepares to make an announcement tomorrow. He refuses to reveal its nature." The Queen frowned. "He'll obey, or he'll lose the throne." Montreuil hesitated. "Forgive me, Majesty, but you can't stop a man who's already decided what his heart is worth." The Queen's expression darkened. "Then the crown will remind him." That night, the palace blazed with light again. Invitations were sent. The nobles gathered. Louis stood alone by the window, the sound of music below him. He whispered to himself, "Tomorrow, they'll know who she is." At that same moment, miles away, Claire whispered his name into the snow. And in the silence that followed, the sound of distant bells began to ring across the frozen fields. The bells of Versailles rang all morning, echoing through the mist. Servants hurried through the corridors carrying garlands and silver trays. The entire palace buzzed with one rumor. The prince would make a public declaration before the court that evening. No one knew what it would be, but everyone had a guess. In the great hall, Louis stood with Montreuil, staring out over the gardens. His face was pale but determined. "They think you'll announce your engagement to the Marquise," Montreuil said. "Then they'll be disappointed," Louis replied. "Your mother will be furious." "She already is." Montreuil hesitated. "Are you certain you want to do this? There's still time to reconsider." Louis turned to him. "I've spent my life reconsidering. Now I'll finally act." Montreuil nodded once, knowing there was no point in arguing. "Then may God protect you both." When he was gone, Louis drew from his pocket the golden pin shaped like a lily. He turned it over in his hand, remembering the way she'd looked the morning he left her, the fear in her eyes, the way her fingers had trembled as she held it. A knock at the door broke his thoughts. The Queen entered without waiting for permission. Her face was calm, but her eyes were cold. "I've heard disturbing talk," she said. "You intend to speak today?" "I do." "About what?" "The truth." "The truth," she repeated. "You call it that, I call it folly." "Then let me be a fool." She stepped closer. "If you dare name that girl in front of the court, you will destroy her. Do you understand? Her life will not survive the weight of your words." Louis met her gaze steadily. "Then you'll hear no name from me. Only my heart." The Queen exhaled sharply. "You'll regret this, perhaps, but I'd regret silence even more." She turned without another word and left him standing there. As the hours passed, the palace filled with guests. Nobles in velvet and lace whispered in clusters, speculating about the prince's intentions. The Marquise of Beaulieu arrived in a gown of crimson silk, her smile confident. "He'll have no choice but to obey," she told anyone who would listen. When the trumpets sounded, the hall fell silent. Louis appeared at the top of the staircase, his posture straight, his expression unreadable. The Queen and her ladies watched from the dais, their faces composed masks. "Your Highness," the herald announced, "will you address your court?" Louis descended the steps slowly. Every gaze followed him. When he reached the center of the hall, he stopped. "My lords and ladies," he said, his voice carrying clearly, "for months you have waited to hear whom I will name as my bride. The court expects an alliance. The kingdom expects obedience. But I cannot give either without honesty." A murmur rippled through the crowd. The Marquise lifted her chin proudly. Louis continued, "At the last masquerade I met a woman who reminded me that truth is not born of rank or title. She was no princess. She carried no jewels, yet she had more courage than anyone I've known." The Marquise's smile faltered. The Queen's fan stopped moving. Louis's voice deepened. "I will not marry for politics. I will not trade my soul for a crown. I will not stand before God and vow to love one woman while my heart belongs to another." Gasps filled the hall. The Marquise's face flushed crimson. The Queen rose. "Louis, that is enough." He faced her. "No, Mother, it's just beginning." The murmurs grew louder, confusion and outrage swirling through the court. Louis raised his hand. "You may call me reckless. You may call me unworthy of the throne. But I would rather live one day in truth than a lifetime in lies." The Queen's voice was icy. "You disgrace yourself." "Perhaps," he said, "but at least I know who I am." He turned and walked out, leaving the stunned court behind. That evening, Versailles was chaos. Couriers galloped from the palace to Paris with the news. The Marquise locked herself in her chamber, shrieking about betrayal. The Queen dismissed half her household in rage. Montreuil found Louis in the stables, stripping the gold braid from his uniform. "She'll call it treason," Montreuil warned. "She can call it what she likes," Louis said. "I've said what I needed to. And now I go to her." Montreuil sighed. "You'll be hunted." "Then let them hunt." Far from the turmoil of the palace, Claire's world had grown small and quiet. She worked at the inn from dawn to dusk, serving travelers and cleaning rooms. The villagers were kind, though they whispered about her accent and the sadness in her eyes. That night, as she scrubbed the floor near the hearth, a traveller entered, a courier, his boots muddy from the long road. He ordered ale and leaned against the counter, talking loudly to the innkeeper. "News from Versailles," he said. "The prince defied the Queen, declared his heart belongs to some mysterious woman." refused to marry the Marquise. The innkeeper laughed. Madness! Who'd risk the crown for love? Claire's hand froze on the bucket. She forced herself to keep scrubbing, her heart racing. The courier continued. They say he walked out in front of everyone. The court's in an uproar. When he turned, he caught her watching him. You look surprised, girl. Didn't you know? The prince has gone mad. She lowered her gaze quickly. I didn't know. That night, when the inn was quiet, she went outside. The fields were covered in frost, and the moon hung low. She looked toward the distant horizon and whispered, Louis, what have you done? Days passed, then weeks. The letters stopped. The snow melted into spring. Claire began to believe he'd been imprisoned, or worse. One morning, as she hung linens behind the inn, she heard a carriage approach. 2 riders in plain coats dismounted. One of them lifted his hat. Claire Dubois. Yes, she said cautiously. The man smiled faintly. We come from His Highness. Her heart leapt. He's alive? He's alive, the man said, and waiting. Where? In the old hunting estate near Fontainebleau. He sent us to bring you safely. Claire hesitated. If the Queen finds out. She already knows, the man said, and she's too busy silencing the court to stop him now. Within an hour, Claire was on the road again, wrapped in a cloak the color of ash. The countryside blurred past as the carriage rolled through forests and fields. She barely breathed, afraid it might all vanish like a dream. When they reached the estate, the driver helped her down. The house was quiet, hidden among trees. Inside, firelight flickered in the great hall. Louis stood there, waiting. For a moment, neither moved. Then he crossed the room and took her hands. I told you I'd find you, he said softly. She stared at him, tears shining in her eyes. They'll destroy you for this. Then let them try. She shook her head. You don't understand. The Queen will never forgive. I don't need forgiveness, he interrupted. I need you. He drew her closer, his voice breaking slightly. I thought I'd lost you. I thought you'd forgotten me. I never could. They stood there in silence, the fire crackling between them. After a long moment, Claire spoke. What happens now? We live, he said simply. Away from the court, away from lies. They'll come for you. Then I'll meet them as a man, not as a prince. She looked at him, searching his face. And if they take you from me again? Then I'll fight my way back. He smiled faintly, trying to ease her fear. Do you remember that night in the corridor? When you told me names destroy dreams? She nodded. Then let me dream, he said. Let me dream of you by name. In daylight, tears slipped down her cheeks. Louis, I don't deserve this. You deserve everything I never had. Outside, the wind rose, rattling the shutters. The moment was fragile, suspended between hope and fear. Then came the sound of hoofbeats in the distance, fast, urgent, drawing closer. Claire stiffened. They've found us. Louis grabbed her hand. To the stables. Now. They ran through the side door into the cold night. The sound of horses grew louder, too many to outrun. Louis turned to her, his breath visible in the air. If they take me, don't follow. Go south, to the convent near Lyon. Montreuil will know where to find you. I won't leave you, she said fiercely. You must. The hoofbeats stopped just beyond the gate. Shouts followed. Torches flared. Louis drew her close for one last heartbeat, his voice low and steady. No matter what happens, remember this. I loved you in truth. The door burst open. Soldiers poured in, their torches casting wild shadows across the walls. Claire cried out as they seized him. He didn't resist. He only looked back at her once, his eyes calm, his mouth forming her name without sound. Montreuil stepped through the doorway, his face pale. I'm sorry, sire, he said quietly. It's the Queen's order. Do what you must, Louis said, but make sure she's safe. 2 guards held Claire as she struggled. Let him go, she screamed. Please. Montreuil lowered his gaze. He's protecting you, mademoiselle. Don't waste it. The guards dragged Louis toward the carriage waiting outside. Claire fought until her strength gave out, her cries lost in the noise of horses and voices. When the courtyard finally fell silent, the torches faded into the darkness of the road. Claire collapsed to her knees, trembling. Montreuil remained in the doorway, the rain beginning to fall around them. He looked at her with something close to pity. You have my word, he said softly. He'll live, but you must disappear. Claire's voice broke. And if he doesn't? Montreuil hesitated, the torchlight flickering across his face. Then I'll make sure the world knows why he fought. Rain poured through the night, beating against the windows of Versailles like 1,000 tiny drums. In the royal chambers, the Queen sat rigidly by the fire, her hands clasped around a goblet of wine she hadn't touched. Montreuil stood before her, his cloak dripping onto the marble floor. "So," she said quietly, "he went through with it." "Yes, Majesty, he found her." "And now?" "He's under guard, confined to the southern wing as you ordered." The Queen's expression didn't change. "And the girl?" "She's gone." "Gone where?" Montreuil hesitated. "Somewhere safe." The Queen's eyes narrowed. "Your loyalty wavers, Montreuil." "My loyalty is to France," he said calmly, "and France cannot afford a prince who despairs." She turned toward the window, watching lightning flash beyond the gardens. "He'll forget her." "No, Majesty," Montreuil said softly. "He won't." The Queen's jaw tightened. "Then I will see to it. He learns how." Down in the dark wing of the palace, Louis sat alone at a heavy wooden table. His wrists were no longer bound, but the door remained locked. He could hear the echo of footsteps outside, the scrape of the guards' boots. His clothes were soaked from the rain, his hair clinging to his forehead. The door opened, and Montreuil stepped inside. "She's safe," he said simply. Louis's eyes lifted. "Where?" "You know I can't tell you." Louis leaned back, exhausted. "You've always been good at keeping secrets." Montreuil's tone softened. "If I hadn't brought you back, the Queen would have sent the army after you both." "Then you should have let them come," Louis said bitterly. "At least I would have been free." Montreuil set a folded paper on the table. "There's a way out, but it isn't what you think." Louis stared at it. "What is this?" "An agreement," Montreuil said. "Sign it, and the Queen will end your confinement. You'll keep your title, your privileges, your life. And the price? You renounce her publicly and agree to marry the Marquise." Louis gave a hollow laugh. "She'd have me chained to duty and call it mercy." Montreuil didn't answer. The silence stretched. Finally, Louis stood, walked to the window, and looked out into the storm. "You said she's safe. That's enough. Then you'll do it?" "I'll stand before them and say what they need to hear," Louis said quietly. "But I won't marry anyone." Montreuil frowned. "They won't accept that. They'll have to." At dawn, the palace came alive again. Servants whispered as Louis appeared in the corridor flanked by guards. The Queen waited in the throne room, pale from sleeplessness, but perfectly composed. The Marquise stood beside her, dressed in white, her smile thin and expectant. Louis stopped before them and bowed slightly. The Queen's voice was cool. "The court will hear your decision." He looked at the sea of faces before him. Nobles, courtiers, and ministers, all holding their breath. "My decision," he said clearly, "is to serve France with honesty. I will uphold the crown's duty. I will obey the laws that govern us." A murmur ran through the room. The Queen tilted her head. "And what of your betrothal?" Louis paused. "I have wronged the Marquise with rumors not of her making. I offer her my apology." The Marquise smiled faintly, her eyes glinting with triumph. "But," Louis continued, "I cannot offer her my hand. That belongs to no one." The Marquise's smile froze. The Queen's fan snapped shut with a sharp crack. "Enough," the Queen hissed under her breath. "You mock me before the court." "I speak truth before the court," he said. The Queen rose. "Then truth will have consequences." Louis bowed again, calm but unyielding. As it always does. When he left the chamber, the whispering started again, some in awe, some in outrage. The Marquise stormed out in tears. The Queen ordered the council to reconvene at once. Montreuil found him later in the corridor. "You've just turned half the court against you." "The other half never stood with me," Louis replied. Montreuil sighed. "You're making this impossible." "It was never possible," Louis said quietly. Meanwhile, miles away, Claire lived under another name in the village of Sainte-Croix. She worked in a small workshop where she stitched fine linen for merchants. Her hands were steady, her voice quiet. No one knew who she was or why she sometimes woke at night whispering a name into the darkness. One evening, as she was closing the shutters, the innkeeper's wife called out to her. "Claire, there's news from Paris." Claire turned. "What kind of news?" "They say the prince refused to marry the Marquise," the woman said, half laughing. "Imagine, a royal scandal, The Queen's fit to faint. Claire gripped the window frame to steady herself. He refused? That's what they're saying. Some think he's lost his mind. She smiled faintly. Or maybe he's found it. That night, she sat by the window, unable to sleep. The wind carried the scent of rain and distant smoke. She thought of him standing before the court, defying them all. In Versailles, Louis's defiance had reached its limit. The Queen summoned him privately. When he entered her chamber, she was writing at her desk. She didn't look up. "Do you know what your rebellion has cost?" she asked. Louis said nothing. Ministers have resigned. Alliances are broken. The Marquise's family demands compensation. You've humiliated us all. I've only told the truth. She set her pen down sharply. You've disgraced the crown. Then the crown should learn what honor means, he said. Her voice rose. You will end this. You will marry the Marquise and silence this nonsense, or you will lose everything. Louis took a slow breath. Then I lose. The Queen stared at him, her composure cracking for the first time. You would throw away your birthright for a servant. He met her eyes. I'd throw away the world for peace. The Queen turned away, trembling. If you walk out of this palace, you'll never return. Louis bowed. Then let this be my last bow. That night, he left Versailles in secret again, this time with Montreuil's help. The advisor handed him a cloak and a sealed letter. It declares your renunciation of the throne, Montreuil said quietly. Louis took it. You understand what this means? Montreuil nodded. France will call you a fool. Then France will remember me honestly. They clasped hands. Find her, Montreuil said. Louis rode through the night until the torches of the palace vanished behind him. The roads were muddy from rain, the sky pale with dawn when he reached Sainte-Croix. The village was waking, smoke curling from chimneys. He dismounted near the workshop and asked for her name. The innkeeper's wife pointed toward the riverbank. She's there every morning, the woman said. Quiet girl, that one. Kind eyes. He followed the path down to the water. Claire was kneeling by the river, washing a length of linen in the cold current. She didn't hear his footsteps until he spoke. Do you still wash the world clean, Claire? She froze. Slowly she turned. The sight of him, mud-streaked, weary, alive, made her breath catch. Louis, she whispered. He smiled faintly. You look surprised. I thought you were lost to me. I was. Until I remembered the way back. She stood, tears welling in her eyes. What have you done? Everything I swore I wouldn't. I defied her, I broke every promise, and I gave away my crown. You what? I'm no longer the Prince of France. She shook her head. You can't mean that. I can. I signed it myself. Louis, you've ruined yourself. He stepped closer. Then let me be ruined here with you. She laughed through her tears. You're mad. Entirely. He took her hands, mud and water between their fingers. I have no title now. No fortune. Only the truth of what I feel. She touched his face, her voice trembling. And what will we do? Live, work, grow old, whatever the world allows. She smiled through her tears. You sound almost ordinary. Then I'm finally free. They stood in the pale light of morning, the river glinting beside them. But peace didn't last long. That afternoon, as they sat in the small workshop, a messenger rode into the village, shouting for shelter. His horse was foaming, his clothes splattered with mud. He staggered into the inn, gasping for breath. The Queen, he said, is dead. The room went silent. Claire looked at Louis. Dead? He nodded slowly. It changes everything, the messenger continued. The council demands the prince's return. France has no ruler. They call for him to take the throne. Louis exhaled. I'm not their prince anymore. But they don't know that, Claire said softly. Montreuil's letter burned in his coat pocket, heavy as a secret. He looked toward the window, the bells of the village tolling faintly in the distance. Claire reached for his hand. What will you do? He didn't answer. The messenger looked between them, confused. Shall I tell them you're alive, Your Highness? Louis's eyes met Claire's. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then she whispered, If you go back, they'll take you from me. And if I don't, they'll destroy the kingdom. The messenger waited, rain dripping from his hat, the air thick with silence. Louis stood slowly, his decision breaking the stillness like thunder. Tell them, he said, the prince is dead. The messenger stared at him, drenched and stunned. "Dead, Your Highness?" Louis's voice was calm. "You heard me. The prince is dead. But they need a king. France will survive," Louis interrupted. "Tell them I drowned in the river on my way to the coast. Tell them the current took me. There will be no body to find." The messenger blinked, unsure whether to bow or protest. "But sire—" "I am not your sire," Louis said. "Go." The man hesitated only a moment before bowing low and hurrying out into the rain. His horse's hooves splashed through the mud as he disappeared down the road. Claire stood frozen near the doorway. "You can't erase yourself." "I just did," Louis said quietly. "It's the only way they'll stop looking." She walked toward him slowly. "They'll mourn you. The whole country will." "Then let them. Better they mourn a prince than hunt a man." Claire's voice trembled. "And what will you be now?" "Alive," he said simply. For a moment, neither spoke. The rain drummed against the roof like applause that had lost its rhythm. She wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong, but part of her knew there was no other way. He turned toward her and smiled faintly. "Now you see? You freed me." She shook her head. "You freed yourself." The next morning, the sky cleared. The fields outside Sainte-Croix glistened with dew. Claire and Louis walked to the market together, side by side. No guards, no titles, no one watching. He carried a basket of apples, she a loaf of bread. Villagers nodded politely, unaware of who he truly was. For the first time in their lives, they were ordinary. He found work in the stables behind the inn, repairing saddles and tending horses. She continued her sewing, her fingers quick and sure. In the evenings, they shared quiet meals by the fire. Sometimes they talked about nothing, about the weather, the baker's gossip, the stubborn rooster behind the barn. Other times, silence was enough. One evening, as they walked along the riverbank, Claire glanced at him. "Do you ever miss it, the palace?" he asked. "The world that was yours?" He smiled faintly. "I miss the books, not the gilded lies." She laughed softly. "You always say things like that. Too serious for a man who smells of horses." He stopped walking. "And you? Do you regret the night we met?" She looked down at the water, her reflection rippling. "Every day," she said softly. "And not once." He reached for her hand. "Then we're even." They stood together as the sun set, orange light spilling across the water. But peace never lasts long, where secrets linger. A month later, a carriage arrived in Sainte-Croix. 2 riders dismounted and went directly to the inn. The villagers watched from doorways, curious. The men wore the insignia of Versailles. Claire saw them first through the window and froze. "Louis," she whispered. "They're here." He looked up from his workbench. "How?" "Someone must have recognized you." He wiped his hands on his apron, his face unreadable. "Stay inside." "Louis, please." He stepped outside to meet them. The taller of the 2 men removed his hat. "Good day, sir. We seek a man named Louis de Valmont." Louis smiled politely. "Never heard of him." The soldier studied him. "You bear a resemblance. I've been told I resemble many men. It must be disappointing for them." The second soldier glanced toward the window where Claire stood. "And the woman?" Louis's tone sharpened. "She's my wife." The men exchanged glances. "Your wife," one repeated slowly. "And what is your name?" "Louis Martin," he said. "Stable hand. Ask anyone in the village." The soldiers hesitated. "If you hear anything about the prince, report it. The council seeks him. France is uneasy." Louis nodded. "Of course. If he wanders into my stables, I'll let you know." When the carriage finally rolled away, Claire rushed outside. "What did they say?" "They're searching," he said. "The Queen's death left the council divided. They want the heir to return." "Then they'll never stop," she whispered. He looked at her gently. "Then we'll keep running until they tire." For the next few weeks they moved often. Small villages, quiet inns, new names. He cut his hair shorter, traded his fine boots for worn leather. She carried the golden lily pin in a pouch around her neck, the only piece of their old life left. But even as they ran, rumors reached them. The court was in chaos. Ministers fought for power. Farmers whispered about rebellion. The people wanted stability, and the name that echoed on every tongue was his. One evening, in a candlelit room above a tavern, Montreuil appeared at their door. Claire gasped when she saw him. How did you find us?" He smiled tiredly. Finding people is my trade. Louis rose from his chair. If you've come to bring me back, you'll fail. I came to warn you, Montreuil said. They've named another successor, the Duke of Orléans. He's dangerous. Louis frowned. Dangerous how? He blames you for the Queen's death and the unrest. He's promised the council he'll restore order by any means. He wants proof you're alive. Claire's voice trembled. Then he'll never stop searching. Montreuil nodded. He's sending men north within days. You must leave France. Leave? Louis repeated. This is my home. Not anymore, Montreuil said. Not if you wish to live. Louis looked at Claire. Do you trust him? She hesitated, then nodded. He's kept his word before. Montreuil handed Louis a folded paper. There's a ship leaving from Dieppe tomorrow night. It will take you to England. From there you can vanish. Louis didn't take it. And you? I'll tell them the truth they want to hear, that the prince died months ago, drowned in the river. Louis studied him. You'd risk your life for that lie? I'd risk it for peace, Montreuil said simply. Claire stepped forward. Why are you doing this? Montreuil smiled faintly. Because I served your father, and I failed him. I won't fail his son. The silence between them stretched, until Louis finally reached out and took the paper. Thank you. Montreuil bowed slightly. Be quick, and burn this once you read it. When he was gone, Claire turned to Louis. England, she said softly. Can we really start over there? We can start anywhere, he said, as long as we're together. The next night, under a moonless sky, they reached the port of Dieppe. The air smelled of salt and coal smoke. The docks were crowded with merchants and sailors shouting over the waves. A man in a long coat met them near the pier. Montreuil's friends? Louis nodded. Your ship's ready. She leaves before dawn. They followed him aboard. The deck creaked underfoot, ropes groaning as the tide rose. Claire clutched his arm, shivering in the cold wind. Are you afraid? He asked. Always, she said, smiling weakly, but less when you're near. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. Then I'll stay near. As dawn crept over the horizon, the sails unfurled. The ship began to move, slow and steady, away from the French shore. Claire watched the coastline fade into mist. Louis stood beside her, silent. When the spires of the port disappeared completely, he exhaled. It's done. Do you think they'll believe it? She asked. They'll have no choice. Hours later, as the sea calmed, they sat together near the bow. She leaned her head against his shoulder. What will we do in England? Find work? Build a life? Pretend to be ordinary again? She smiled softly. We were getting good at that. He nodded. Perhaps one day they'll forget the prince who vanished. And remember the man who lived, she added. But even as they spoke, far across the sea, the Duke of Orléans stood in the council chamber holding a sealed letter. It bore Montreuil's signature and the royal crest. He broke the seal and read aloud. By my hand and oath I declare that Louis de Valmont, Crown Prince of France, perished in the river near Fontainebleau. His remains were never recovered. The Duke smiled coldly. Then France belongs to me. Montreuil bowed, hiding his trembling hands. As you say, my lord. Outside the palace, thunder rolled across the sky. The bells began to toll once more, this time not in mourning but in warning. In a small house near the English coast weeks later, Claire stood by the window as Louis repaired the roof. His laughter floated down as he worked, free and unguarded. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe it might last. Then a knock came at the door. She opened it, expecting the neighbor, but froze when she saw Montreuil standing there, his face pale and drawn. Montreuil, she breathed. You shouldn't be here. I had no choice, he said. The lie didn't hold. Louis appeared behind her, wiping his hands on a rag. What happened? Montreuil's voice was low and urgent. The Duke discovered the truth. He knows you're alive. Louis's eyes darkened. Then it ends tonight. The wind howled outside the little cottage, rattling the shutters like an impatient messenger. Montreuil stood by the door, rain dripping from his coat. His face was drawn, his breath uneven. Louis set down the hammer in his hand. Say it again, he demanded quietly. The Duke knows, Montreuil said. He has proof you're alive. He sent riders across the channel this morning. They'll be here by nightfall. Claire's hands went cold. Then we have to run. Louis shook his head. We've run enough. Louis, he turned to her, eyes fierce but gentle. If I keep fleeing, we'll never stop. He'll chase us to the end of the earth. It ends here. Montreuil stepped forward. You can't fight the Duke's men. They have orders to bring you back, or kill you if you resist. Then I'll speak before they draw swords, Louis said. I'll make them hear me. Claire grabbed his arm. You don't owe France anything anymore. You're free. Don't throw that away. He smiled faintly. Freedom means nothing if I hide while my people are ruled by a tyrant. They'll suffer for my silence. Montreuil looked between them. If you face them, you could lose everything. Louis took Claire's hand. Not everything. She met his gaze, trembling. Then I'm with you. He cupped her face. You've already given me courage enough for 10 lifetimes. They spent the rest of the afternoon preparing. Montreuil secured the doors, hid their few possessions, and rode to the nearby village to warn the townspeople. Louis packed only what they could carry, a few clothes, the golden pin, and the letter of renunciation he had once signed. As dusk fell, the storm broke fully. Rain slashed across the hills, lightning cutting through the clouds. Claire lit the lamps, her fingers trembling as she adjusted the wick. They'll come in this weather? She asked. They'll come, Louis said. Ambition doesn't wait for fair skies. Montreuil returned just as thunder rolled overhead. They're close, he said. A dozen men, maybe more. But the villagers have gathered in the square. They won't hand you over easily. Word has spread of who you are. They call you the prince who gave up his crown for love. Louis smiled faintly. Then I'll show them what love truly means. He stepped outside into the storm, rain drenching his hair and cloak. The square glowed with torchlight. Dozens of villagers stood there, frightened but determined. Children peeked from behind their mothers' skirts. The Duke's soldiers rode in from the road, their horses slick with mud. The captain at their head raised a hand. By order of His Grace, the Duke of Orléans, surrender yourself, Louis de Valmont. Louis took a step forward, his voice carrying through the rain. I am no prince of France, that man is dead. The captain sneered. We have proof otherwise. Then your proof lies, Louis said. Because the man I was, died the day he learned love, is worth more than any throne. A murmur rippled through the crowd. The villagers closed ranks behind him, holding torches high. The captain hesitated, glancing at the numbers. We're not here to slaughter farmers, he muttered. But we'll take you if we must. Louis raised his voice again. Tell your duke this. France deserves a ruler who serves its people, not one who fears them. I renounced my crown to live as one of them, and I'll die as one of them before I bend to tyranny. A shout rose from the villagers, cheers, cries of defiance. The captain's horse reared nervously. Montreuil stepped forward from the crowd. Listen to him, he shouted. You served the Queen once, and you know the truth of this man. He's no traitor. He's France's heart. The captain's hand hovered over his sword, uncertain. If I return empty-handed, the Duke will hang me. Then bring him this, Louis said. He held up the sealed parchment, the letter of renunciation. The wax had cracked with age, but the royal crest was still visible. Tell him it's my confession, my final word. The captain reached out cautiously. What is it? My death, Louis said simply, signed and sealed by my own hand. Tell him I'm no longer his rival. For a long moment no one moved. Then the captain nodded slowly. Very well. He tucked the parchment inside his coat. We'll say we found nothing but a grave beside the sea. He turned to his men. Mount up. We ride for Calais. When they were gone, the villagers erupted in cheers, surrounding Louis and Claire. Montreuil exhaled in relief, his shoulders shaking. It's over, Claire whispered. Louis looked at her, rain streaming down his face. No, he said softly. It's beginning. The villagers guided them back to the cottage, lighting lanterns and offering food. Inside, the fire burned low, filling the room with golden warmth. Montreuil closed the door behind them. You've done the impossible, he said. You've ended this without blood. Louis smiled faintly. You did as much as I. Montreuil shook his head. My work's finished. Yours isn't. The people will talk of you, Louis. You'll become legend. But let that legend end here with peace. He extended his hand. Goodbye, Your Highness. Louis clasped it firmly. No more titles, Montreuil. Just Louis. The older man smiled. Then goodbye, Louis. And God keep you." He left quietly, disappearing into the rain. When the sound of his horse faded, Claire turned to Louis. The tension that had filled the air for days melted away. She stepped closer, her voice barely a whisper. "You'd really have let them take you?" "If it meant your safety, yes." "You fool," she said softly, her eyes shining. "You don't belong to France anymore." He smiled. "Then where do I belong?" She reached up and touched his face, her thumb brushing away the raindrops. "Here," she said. "With me." He caught her hand and kissed it. "Then I'm home." The fire crackled behind them, warm and bright. The storm outside began to ease, the rain fading to a soft drizzle. He drew her close, resting his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said quietly. "More than the crown, more than freedom itself." She laughed softly, tears mixing with her smile. "Then love me in peace, not in sacrifice." "I intend to," he said, "for as long as I breathe." She leaned into him, their lips meeting gently at first, then deeper, as if all the storms of their lives had been leading to this one still moment. The world beyond their walls vanished. No court, no titles, no fear, only the rhythm of their hearts and the sound of rain turning to silence. Later they sat by the fire, her head on his shoulder, his arm wrapped around her. The golden pin gleamed on the table beside them. "Do you ever think of what might have been?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Sometimes. But then I remember that what is better, even without a crown, especially without one." She closed her eyes, content. "You always did want to change the world." He looked down at her, his voice tender. "And I did. I found you." Days passed, then weeks. The villagers accepted them completely. A quiet couple who worked hard and loved deeply. Children ran to greet them in the mornings. Neighbors shared bread and laughter. The past faded like a dream that no longer had power to wake them. In summer, the fields bloomed bright with wildflowers, the same scent that had once filled a royal corridor. Claire picked them for their table every day, smiling at the memory. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Louis stood in the doorway watching her move through the garden. Her dress fluttered in the breeze, her laughter carrying through the air. For the first time in his life, he felt whole. She looked up and caught him staring. "What?" "Nothing," he said, grinning. "Just wondering how I ever mistook gold for beauty." She laughed and ran to him, her hands finding his. "You still talk like a poet." "Then you're my muse," he said, "and you're incorrigible." They kissed again, sunlight and laughter mingling between them. That night the village celebrated the midsummer festival. Music filled the square, and torches lit the fields. Louis and Claire joined the dance, their steps light, their faces glowing in the firelight. The villagers clapped, cheering for the couple who had become part of their story. As the music slowed, Louis leaned close to her ear. "Do you remember the first time I held you?" "In a corridor full of shadows," she whispered. He smiled. "Then let this be our light." She looked into his eyes. "Forever, forever." They danced until the fire burned low and the stars shimmered above them. When the night finally quieted, they walked hand in hand to the riverbank. The water glimmered beneath the moon, calm and endless. Louis took the golden pin from his pocket and held it out. "This once bound me to a crown. Now it binds me to you." She smiled and fastened it to his shirt. "Then you'll never lose it again." He kissed her forehead, pulling her close as the wind carried the scent of wildflowers through the air. And for the first time since the night of masks and secrets, there were no more lies, no more fear, only two hearts that had found their way through darkness into peace. He whispered, "The prince is truly dead." She looked up at him and smiled. "Then long live the man I love. Thank you so much for listening to this story, all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you liked the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.